stuff is so much more than just that. Yes, you have less things, but you can be so much more. So as we talk about today, I know we talked about downsizing and organizing your way to happiness. We had a building sustainable tiny, and now we're about to go into a panel discussion with some amazing people about zoning codes. Where can you build? How can we build it? So again, it's an ever ongoing conversation with our community leaders about how we can actually make this a reality. I don't think, and I do not foresee that the world is just going to say, yes, we want tiny houses everywhere. Could you imagine a tiny house in Buckhead? If people know that, I just don't think they're going to like it. There's a lot of not in my backyard going on there. But if we're able to strategically use this movement to place tiny houses on foundation, tiny houses on wheels in different areas around Georgia, the Southeast, and this nation, I see sustainable walkable communities. I see infill for communities. I see a lot more people wanting to be a part of the community than just worrying about that job to buy the house. Hi. Oh, my password. That would work. Hold, please. And I've lost my train of thought. So, while we are just waiting for that lovely PowerPoint to pop up, this panel does go till 2:20, and I will introduce people, which I will walk over here and do. So, I will actually ask you guys to stand up, but we have Angela Threadgill from the city of Decatur. We have Ted Notatis from the Department of Community Affairs, state of Georgia. And we have Elizabeth Roberts, Fulton County Attorney. Did I say that right? All right, good. She just recently became the Fulton County Attorney. Elizabeth has been an amazing mentor for me just with this movement, so she knows a lot about it, and she has helped me understand how to approach the thought process of how we move this movement forward for different communities. A little to the left. No, I'm kidding. Everyone see that all right? All right, so, yes, ma'am. Is that hard to see in the back? I don't think that's going to work either. The screen either goes all the way up or all the way down. So I'm sorry if it's inconvenient. Feel free to stand in the back. But do know that the content will be coming out of the people's mouths instead of necessarily the PowerPoint. Usually it's just visually pretty pictures for people to see to make sure your minds are stimulating while they're talking. So, and with that, we're almost there. So we're going to have Ted Notatis start from the Georgia State Chapter Community Affairs. But first, a word from our sponsor. We have a survey. I've been told it crashed because everyone went on at the same time. So I would love, I did send out an email to everyone who bought an online ticket. What we are doing, we need your data. We need you to tell us how you want to live, where you want to live, the square footprint size of your house. So if you could go to http://bit.ly/tinyhousesurvey, this will give us a lot of information to help us make this movement move forward. This is the stuff we talk about to the realtors, to the developers, to the city commissioners. This is the stuff that we need to be able to say, see, all of these people from 18-year-olds to retirees want this movement. So we need your help. Please go online. I'll also be putting up on the Tiny House Atlanta website after this festival. We need your information on what you want out of this movement. So without further ado, do you want a chair? Do you need a chair? I will find you a chair. Portia has a chair. Can I have that chair, Portia?
Nope, the bottom. The bottom of the chair.
All right, so I'm going to move it over to Ted. Take it away.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for having me here. I'm Ted Miltiades, Director of the State of Georgia's Construction Codes Program. I'm Ted Miltiades, Director of the state's Construction Codes Program. And when I travel with a group just in case I get stuck or have a tough question. So I have two of my technical staff, Bill Towson, here with me, Seti Ordubadi, our new codes consultant, and Tracy Turgent. She works with our Commissioner, Camila Knowles. So we've got a few slides that we want to talk about. While they're getting that up, we brought some handouts that you have. And I don't think there were enough handouts, but there are 3 color sheets, blue, yellow, and green, and 2 brochures on the Construction Codes Program and the Industrialized Buildings Program. Next slide. Next slide. This is our address, this is our contact information, our website, where you can read about the state's Construction Codes Program and the state's Industrialized Buildings Program. What do? The Uniform Codes Act, the State Codes Advisory Committee. We also have a member, Ryan Taylor. Is Ryan here? He's a member of the State Codes Advisory Committee representing architects. It's a 21-member advisory committee made up of folks from the public and private sector. We make the adoption of codes is what we mainly do, and we help in local government code enforcement. So this is a list of some of the things we're going to go over. These are the 8 mandatory construction codes: building code, fuel gas, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, fire, energy, and 1 and 2 family dwellings. Those codes are mandatory for any structure, 1 and 2 family or commercial built in Georgia. Now, what can we do to help the tiny house movement? You can do a local code amendment, which could move that process forward, or we could do a state amendment to change the room size to make the tiny houses move faster. Next. Our industrialized buildings are factory-built structures built in a factory, and there are factories all over Georgia. There are 85 approved manufacturers in our program, and 23 of those are located in Georgia. And they are third-party inspection agencies that go and inspect for those 8 mandatory codes, which are on that green sheet that you have there. Here's a map with factories around Georgia. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see if any of these factories that produce modular homes, which is equivalent to a stick-built home, can see a value in producing producing tiny houses. So they can produce their modular as well as a tiny house. Because what is a tiny house? It's just a stick-built or a modular, but it's smaller. But it's got all the same things, and we're trying to be sure that those tiny houses can also meet the state's 8 mandatory construction codes that are applicable. Here's some examples and some pictures of what our industrialized program approves, issues insignia, and inspects. All of these are built in a factory, and they're taken out to the site, and then they put up some Chick-fil-A's, some gas stations. You see the ice house. There's a whole variety of things that are in our industrialized buildings program. Next. So to know if it's a state-approved industrialized building, whether it's commercial or residential, it has to have an insignia from the state of Georgia. And here's an example of insignia. This is a list of the third-party inspection agencies that go to those factories to be sure those structures meet code when they leave the factory. A regular stick-built home is built out in, say, here in Decatur or in DeKalb County, and DeKalb County will come out and check for the electrical, plumbing, building, etc. Ours are all done in the factory, and then when it gets out to the site, the building official says it's got that insignia. We just have a couple of other things to do with the setting. Next. So we're not talking about park models. Those are the ones that are on wheels. We're not talking about HUD-built structures. Those are like trailers or mobile homes. We're talking about residential, industrialized buildings, IB homes. Modular is a generic word that people use a lot to describe that. Okay, these are some of the things that concern the code with tiny houses. Room size. We have to be sure it's a certain room size. There is a change in an upcoming code that will make it easier for them to meet code. Ceiling height, hallway minimum width, loft, stairs. Energy code is very important, and accessibility, which I think you'll hear a little more about also. There is a change that we're going to be considering at the state, and that will be changing the habitable room size to no less than 70 square feet. By doing that, we'll make it a little bit easier for these tiny houses to meet the state's construction codes, and therefore encourage people to do tiny houses. And I hope to make that connection with the tiny house movement and the industrialized buildings program, bring those two together. Next. Okay, here's an example. We just took some pictures to show you some of the different tiny houses. We try to be sure there are ours, and this is the thing that will distinguish ours from the ones that are on wheels. They have to be, this may not be a perfect example, but ours have to be on a permanent foundation. They can't be moved. So you can see a tiny house, say neighborhood, where they put a dozen tiny houses, but they put them on a permanent foundation. So those are the ones that we're going after, and we're not going after all the others. This is just one area or niche that the state is trying to bring under its I don't want to say regulation or authority, or its guidance. Next. That's it. So basically, two programs, the state's construction codes program. That's the green sheet, tells you about the 8 mandatory codes. That yellow sheet is contact information. And the blue sheet, what's the blue sheet? The blue sheet is also contact information where you can buy the state's construction codes books, etc. So I'll be here, and my staff is here to help me if we have any questions. But what we're after is the permanent foundation tiny house. We're trying to bring them into our state program, the industrialized buildings program, to see if that's a niche. Now, that's going to be a little different from the ones on wheels. But I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Ted. So does everyone understand? I know, just do a quick survey. Who wants a tiny house on wheels? Raise your hand. All right, who wants a tiny house on foundation? All right, that's your audience, Ted. Ted was talking directly to people that raised their hands. So I'm very excited, if you don't know, and we're gonna be talking about this at It Takes a Village, about building tiny house communities. And this is what Ted is directly talking about, being able to build tiny houses on foundation for our movement. And it's very exciting to have someone at the state level looking to change minimum room requirements to allow us to make this happen. So our next guest speaker is Elizabeth Roberts. Yes. Yes, we can email that green sheet information. We will put it up online. We will make sure it is shouted from the mountaintops. Thank you, sir. Our next guest. Good thing we're inside. We have Elizabeth Roberts from, now I just forgot, the Fulton State County Attorney's Office. There you go. So Elizabeth has been a huge person that's been involved in the tiny house movement. She helped advise multiple organizations. She and I are both on the American Tiny House Association. I'm a board member. You're a board member. You just rolled off, but you helped start it. So Elizabeth is going to talk about her expertise in zoning and codes and what she's been doing and working with it. And that was a really bad, general, vague way to describe what you're about to talk about. So Elizabeth, so come on up. Elizabeth Roberts.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to kind of gauge who's here. So I saw a show of hands of those of you that want to be on foundation again. There you go. Show of hands of those of you that want to be on a movable product. Okay. All right. So there are a couple of things that I get to talk to you about. I am the hall monitor. I'm the public safety person. And as indicated by Ted a minute ago, there are a couple of things that I want you to be aware of and to think about when you're either buying or building a tiny home. Okay? The first one that is, in my mind, is a public safety person. The most important one is your accessibility. I want the police person or the fire person to be able to enter that dwelling and get you out in case you need help. Now, there are some things that you can help make sure happens when you're building or buying, you need a standard entrance front door from a public safety perspective. I know that we see a lot of tiny house products out there that have a smaller than average front door. So I want you aware of that, okay? I want you to have windows. If you're gonna have a loft, I want you to have a skylight and window. I want that to be accessible to you. I want you to be able to get out, okay? The other piece that I want you to think about with regard to public safety is where can you lawfully be, right? For those of you that are going to be on foundation, you have some zoning issues that you get to deal with and some challenges. Opportunities and challenges, as I like to call them. On a wheeled product, you're going to have the same kind of challenges, but you're also going to have some community challenges. For those of you that have looked at a wheeled product, one of the things that you're going to hear, and one of the things that Will has talked about in the past, has been, I don't want something like that in my neighborhood. It may affect my home value. You know, there was a little discussion a minute ago about fuck that. So part of what the city of Atlanta, the city of Decatur, hopefully soon Fulton County, have been taking a look at is how best to allow you to incorporate these kinds of products into the existing fabric of housing, right? So how do we do that? One of them that you're going to hear more about, ADUs. Does anybody know what an ADU is? Accessory dwelling unit, fantastic, very proud. That goes on a permanent foundation, located in a backyard. You got to meet the setback requirements that are required for the local area. The good news for DeKalb County, how many DeKalb County residents do I have in the room? Let me congratulate you, and let me tell you that you are the most progressive county in the state of Georgia. I might get a little clap out of that. You now have the ability to do an ADU. How about that? New zoning code allowed you to be able to do that. There were some folks in the room at the drafting of the zoning code, the new zoning code, that took out the minimums in the ADU requirement. What does that mean? That means that originally when you guys saw the draft of the zoning code, it had an 800 square foot minimum. How about that? We have houses in DeKalb County that are smaller than that already, right? So when you take the minimum out, you then get to come under a different set of codes, different set of requirements. At that point in time, you do something different, right? One of the other things that your city of Atlanta, city of Decatur, have been looking at is how now will we incorporate both the on-foundation product and the on-wheeled product. How many city of Atlanta residents do I have in the room? Beautiful. Let me tell you that the city of Atlanta is working very hard for you in a feasibility study. How about that? Feasibility study is looking at how we will incorporate micro apartments, tiny houses on wheels, tiny houses on foundations. So when you do that, I need you to send a big thank you to Kwanzaa Hall. For those of you that don't know Kwanzaa Hall is one of the city county commissioners, or city council, thank you. City council, he began the project. That project is ongoing. Robert Reed is on that project. Please stand up for those of you who haven't met Robert. Will Johnson's on that committee. And I am on that committee. So, DeKalb County has something to be proud of. City of Atlanta has something to be proud of. And you're going to hear absolutely the city of Decatur. How about that? So, when we talk about progress, you're going to see a lot of it. We need you to give us input. We need your support. Elected officials need to hear from you. We need your support. I recently onboarded at the Fulton County Attorney's Office, so that basically we're going to end up closing the loop, right? In doing that, you have to have your local folks, you have to have the county folks, you have to have input from your constituents to be able to move forward. Is everybody with me? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our most close local.
Hello everyone, I'm Angela Threadfield, Planning Director for the City of Decatur. So welcome to our fair city. So back in 2005, it became a real priority to look at making the City of Decatur a place where different housing sizes and housing types could be built in the city. The reason being is that we had some pretty hard data in our 2005 comprehensive plan. We followed that up in 2008 with an affordability housing study that laid out several recommendations. And subsequently to that, there have been many plans that built on that affordability housing study, including our 2010 strategic plan. One of the goals in that strategic plan was to create smaller housing types and adjust our zoning code to support that and allow it by right. So let's move forward, and again. So I want to give kind of a snapshot of what our housing situation is right now. We have 44 square miles. 75% of our land area is residential uses. 91% of those residential units are the detached single family, our traditional detached single family. So we're doing really well in that area. 7% of that land area is then dedicated to more of our multifamily. So let's jump forward. So right now, we're doing really well on these ends of the spectrum. But what we need to do is start creating better affordability using what's called the missing middle. So there's different housing types, because not everyone wants to stay in their home or move directly into a single family home, the landscaping, the upkeep, nor do people may want to move into an apartment or a condominium. They want their own area, or move out and have their own area. So if you want to learn more about the missing middle, Eric Kronberg will be speaking about this tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Let's jump forward. There's the missing middle building types, but we also have a missing middle income here in Decatur, and it is shrinking. Here on the left-hand side is our 2000 income distribution. Those areas that are shaded in purple, green, and red, that's kind of our middle income. So it's ranging from our working class, not working class, but yes, it's the people that are in the service industry, our baristas, our bank tellers, and then on up to our office workers, people like you and me. So you can see how much of our distribution in the city of Decatur back in 2000 was made up of the majority of those middle incomers. If we move to 2014, you can see how much that has shrunk. It's quite stark. So let's jump forward. And then just from the housing economics, we've had over 10% increase in housing units since 2000. And this just paints a picture that what is being built is not affordable. So between 2000 and 2004, the median housing value was about $365,000. At that time, that was affordable to people making $120,000, 120% of the area median income. That median income being $77,202. That is for the city of Decatur. And then between 2005 and 2014, the median value has jumped just over $416,000. That's incredible. So let's jump over. So what we have done within our Unified Development Ordinance, which was adopted in 2014 and became effective just last year, February of 2015, is we've done some adjustments. So for principal dwelling units, like many jurisdictions, there was a minimum floor area requirement, and that was 1,500 square feet. What we learned is that we've kind of knocked out the opportunity for affordable housing, smaller affordable housing. And like Elizabeth was saying, we have many houses in the city of Decatur that are less than 1,500 square feet. And I'm sure many of us grew up in homes that were less than 1,500 square feet. So with our new UDO, we have eliminated the minimum floor area altogether. So that opens up the opportunity for tiny houses to be built in the city of Decatur. And then moving on, we have also permitted by right the accessory dwelling unit to be placed behind a single family dwelling. I'll move to the next slide, but the cottage court is another opportunity that we have created, and I'm going to be speaking about that tomorrow and going into more detail about that at 1 o'clock here?
Yes.
Here, okay. All right, so with the principal dwelling unit, if the tiny house is going to be used as a principal dwelling unit, as Elizabeth said, it'll have to comply, just like any home, to the setbacks, the lot coverage, the floor area ratio, and there are many lots in the city of Decatur that are legal but non-conforming, that the only feasible building that could be built there is a tiny house, just to meet all of these requirements. One off-street parking space is needed, and then for the tiny house, it can be rented out or it can be owner-occupied. Moving on. So when a tiny house is being used as an accessory dwelling unit, it can be, let's see here, the maximum square footage is 800 square feet, so a tiny house would definitely fit into that threshold. And it can have up to 2 bedrooms. But then when it's used as an accessory dwelling unit, a property owner can occupy the tiny house and rent out the principal dwelling unit, or vice versa. You can have a tiny house in the rear yard and rent that out. So let's move on. Well, I do want to point out very quickly that the way that our code is written right now, because we just briefly talked about the tiny house on wheels, and I saw a share of hands. The way that our code is written right now is that it is not permitted at this time. It is considered a travel trailer or a recreational vehicle, and our code doesn't allow people to make a travel trailer or a recreational vehicle a principal dwelling unit. But if we start hearing feedback from our community that they would like to see this, then we can start looking at code amendments, but it does have to come from our residents, our community. Thank you.
So we are going to do questions at the end, so do think of questions that you would like to ask this amazing panel. So, and do forgive us, we only have one microphone since we switched into here quickly, so I'm going to ask the panel a question. They're going to respond. I wanted more of a conversation for us to have up here, but I apologize. For us to get more people in, we've got one mic. So we've heard from 3 perspectives and ways that they see this tiny house moving forward, but I would like them to, that general question, what does success look like? From Angela's perspective, Ted's perspective, and Elizabeth's perspective. So I wouldn't mind, obviously you're not on the record, even though we are videotaping this, but I would like a perspective of what you see where this is going, and in a perfect world, this is what would happen. So I don't know if we'd like to start. Angela, would you like to start first?
For the city of Decatur, our success is not, made by how much we make. Our success is built on our diversity. That's what we value in the city of Decatur. And if you remember those donuts, where we have a shrinking middle income class, our success would be measured by how much we can grow that back out. That's how we would measure success and the diversity.
You want to give a little bit about the cottage court, a little bit about actual spaces?
Oh, sure. So with the cottage court, it can be also called a bungalow court or clustered homes. but the way our zoning code is written right now is it allows 5 to 9 cottages, smaller cottages, maximum square footage of 1,800 square feet, and they're all clustered around a courtyard. And what we're looking at now for our particular project here in the city of Decatur is making that affordable. So we're looking at certain price points, we're looking at ways to keep it affordable for the long haul through deed restrictions. Oh, I'm sorry? So the lot size for the cottage court okay. So the cottage court project that we're working on is about a half acre. Yep. For each? For the cottage court.
For the whole thing.
So for the half acre, again, I'm going to request people to come tomorrow, but for the half acre, we're looking at approximately 6. It's still very conceptual, but 6 cottages.
I think success can be measured by choice. A tiny house might not be for everyone, but if you want a stick-built house or a McMansion, or you want a modular house, which is under our industrialized buildings program, or do you want a tiny house? I think American people are all about choice. People are becoming minimalist, and if they want to be able to afford a tiny house, that's what they should, it should be provided, and the state should have a mechanism for verifying that those homes meet code. So I think success is measured by choice and affordability.
As far as, I would say success, at least in this environment, would be that you get to build the building of your choice, that it is done well, that it is done safely, and that if you choose to be incorporated into the community on a foundation, that you get incorporated into that community with open arms and acceptance. If you choose to come in on a trailer, that you get the same opportunity to participate in the community, wherever that might be.
So the next question that I have for the panel is, what advice would you give? Again, quick survey. Who's from Georgia? Who's not from Georgia? Welcome. That's great. Where's the farthest? Do I have Tennessee? I know I got Tennessee there. All right, South Carolina? Wonderful. North Carolina? Texas? I don't know why I said Texas. We got someone from Texas? Wow, that's awesome. All right, so the question to the panel is, what advice would you give, just like I've been doing with my group? How would you advise people approach your groups, either planning, zoning, state departments? How would you want to be approached if people wanted to do this in their area?
Okay, earlier I mentioned that we're looking at doing a state amendment to change the size of rooms. There is an option in state law that cities and counties can amend the code, and they can expedite that process by a code amendment. I know that Savannah is looking at that because they're looking to create a tiny house development. So if you want to get involved in the local level, you can replicate that and do a local amendment so you can approach your city or county, and it's a fairly quick turnaround, about 60 days to change that room size. There'll be some other code things that will have to be identified from that building inspection department. So I think the best way you can get involved if you want to expedite it would be to do a local code amendment in your jurisdiction.
Well, if you live here in the city of Decatur, you own property, just give me a call. My staff and I will easily answer any questions that you have, see if it's feasible for you. Also tomorrow, when I'm speaking, I will be joined by Mark Ethan, who is our local building official, and he will dive more into the details and the local code if you're considering building here in the city of Decatur.
With respect to out of metro jurisdictions, how many folks do I have that are outside the metro area? Okay. You are going to be a special project for the building and planning department, because they will have not had the benefit of these kinds of discussions just yet. They're coming, but you're going to be a special project. Don't be intimidated by that. One of the things that you're going to have to do is to go in and introduce yourself. And it's going to take a lot of door knocking, okay? When this movement started, and this was, I got involved in this probably 8 years ago, and was working with some folks. How many people know Jay Schaefer? Show of hands at Jay Schaefer. D. Williams? Show of hands at D. Williams? Okay. There's some folks that have been working on this for a very long time. And I had the benefit and pleasure of getting to know them. And what it takes when you are outside a metropolitan area is knocking on doors and working with the planning department. You're going to have to present plans, you're going to have to explain to them how, they're going to have to come back, you're going to have revisions. There are two things that I always tell folks that you're going to need when you do this and you're special. One, you're going to have to be persistent. And two, you're going to have some good support and counsel. So don't be intimidated by the fact that you're probably going to need to talk to a lawyer. You're probably going to need to talk to an architect. Folks are going to want to have the plans meet their requirements. They'll be willing to work with you most times. But they may ask you to make an adjustment. They may ask you to do something a little different. And when that happens, you're probably going to want to have those people in your Rolodex. Okay?
So I had a question, but I completely blanked. So we're going to throw it out to the audience. Oh, you raised your hand first. Hi, how are you?
I'm Jenny Dodd, and I'm from Decatur. I'm a realtor here. I lived in Oregon for a couple of years, and I was in Corvallis and visited Portland. And the tiny house movement is huge out there. And one reason I think it's very successful is because you'll go in neighborhoods and you'll regularly see a lot that has 4 to 6 tiny houses, like you're talking about cottage courts. I live in unincorporated Decatur. I think until we start making it okay to have one lot out of 20 that affords 6 people to come in and build their tiny house, we're not going to be really successful. It needs to be walkable to MARTA and to transportation. You don't need to worry about a car. But I'm wondering if there have been efforts in the state where we start to get people to accept the fact that tiny houses are real. They're a great solution. I'm a single person. I have children. I don't want them staying with me. They're older. You guys get it. She's 20. Done. But I'm wondering to know if there's any effort in the state. Cottage courts is a great idea, but I want a cottage court per neighborhood.
So I'm going to respond first. So again, just like to what Elizabeth and Ted and Angela all said, but so come to the talk at 3:30. Is that when we're talking, Jeremy? 3:30? Okay, 3:30. It takes a village because it's going to take one. Like Ted said, Savannah is doing it, and it does take all of you calling your state officials, calling the people, and letting them know we're wanting this. That's one step of many. But people are in the works of planning these developments. So come and listen to the 3:30 talk, and we'll answer more on that. But I completely hear the fact that we want it near MARTA, we want it mass transit friendly, walkable friendly, to be able to build that walkable, sustainable community. So with that, I'm going to throw it to, does anyone have else a response?
So for our cottage court project, it is within a half mile of the downtown Decatur MARTA station. We have 3 MARTA stations within the city of Decatur, so that is our goal. But I want to point out that we are in the midst of a comprehensive plan update for the city, and one of the questions that we asked constituents is, would you support a cottage court concept within these traditional single-family residential neighborhoods? Because right now, it's only permitted within certain zoning districts. And there was over 70% support for allowing these types of developments within our traditional single family. Yes. So we're going to start exploring that.
The City of Atlanta is also looking at incorporating, and they're taking a look at it from a couple of different vantage points. One is the use of non-conforming lots. And I apologize. How many of my City of Atlanta folks do I have in here? Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you have in the City of Atlanta are neighborhoods where you had fairly small lots. You had shotgun houses. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yes, the original tiny house, a shotgun house, right? So that just because the houses are gone, doesn't mean the lots aren't there, right? So that the City of Atlanta is going to begin to take a look at what the possibility is of bringing that housing product back in, so that you begin to put the density that used to be there a long time ago back in place. They're also looking at bringing in micro apartments. It's something that I don't believe we talked about yet. Micro apartments, meaning that you've got less than 500 square feet to an apartment. And those apartment buildings are in a metropolitan area. Understand that most of this works best when we are truly in a metropolitan area, the City of Atlanta, City of Decatur, that kind of stuff. But that's what the city's doing.
So I do also want to point out, I made this mistake, and it was a rookie mistake. Serenity has 2 tiny houses down there, and so I went and visited for their opening. It's on their art farm, and I posted on my Facebook page, oh my gosh, Serenity got around zoning code laws to build these tiny houses. I was quickly corrected by the Palmetto planning and zoning guy. He called me and just said, no, they complied. And so, and that was a huge learning thing for me. I'm not trying to be against the government. I'm not trying to sneak away and go stay in like a little square foot place and be like, haha, I'm not paying taxes. No, this is still being a part of our government, being a part of our community. So, we are complying with what laws and zoning and codes have been written, but we also know if we get enough interest, we're able to change them. And that's why you all are in this room. Yes?
She's from Decatur. Now, DeKalb County zoning, this is probably different.
Here, come here, hold on.
Okay, she's speaking from the city of Decatur, but I'm considered in DeKalb County. So the rules you're saying not necessarily applying. For accessory dwelling units and are sheds put in the same category?
Say that again.
Storage sheds and accessory dwelling unit, is that the same code thing?
Hold on, coming on. And I ask if you have a question, please form a line either on the left or the right, and I will come to you. That means get up out of the chair.
So for all local jurisdictions within DeKalb County, we have our own set of zoning codes and building codes. So if you live in unincorporated DeKalb County, then you would be following DeKalb County's Unified Development Code. Yes. And unfortunately, I'm not as familiar with unincorporated DeKalb County, but I can certainly get you the contact.
What you have in DeKalb right now is the ability to do an ADU behind a primary dwelling. No minimums, no square footage minimums.
Permanent foundation?
Permanent foundation, correct, permanent foundation.
Next question. Hi, Mike.
Well, I was wondering, are there any stipulations, or is anything coming down the pike in any of these jurisdictions where we're looking at sort of a cluster community in terms of the ones on wheels?
Like they tried to formulate it.
So you're specifically talking tiny house on wheels?
Correct.
I will address that. So Kwanzaa did bring up that we are looking at it, tiny house on wheels, in our feasibility study. We do know that tiny houses on foundation is going to be a lot easier to execute first, but we also need to see strategically how to implement tiny houses on wheels and how it would work. Actually, I would also recommend coming to our 3:30 talk because Jeremy, behind you from Wind River Tiny Houses, he's building a tiny house community on wheels in Chattanooga. So please come to the 3:31 and learn more about that, as well as I'm going to throw it to the panel if you would like to say anything about tiny houses on wheels.
So for those of you that are interested in a trailer product, right, you're going to be movable. The City of Atlanta is looking at that. One of the challenges is that we've had difficulty figuring out how to have something certified. A lot of builders now are using the the vehicle code, RVIA, for certification. Okay, does that sound familiar to some folks in here? I see some head shaking, right? So one of the things that goes along with the RVIA is that you can't claim that as your primary residence. That's not in the law's mind a primary dwelling. So a long time ago, in the way distant past, someplace where most of you have never been, there used to be what's known as a mobile home park.
Yeah, why can't we use that?
Right? And I love real estate because what was old is new again. In the city of Atlanta, you only have one of them. And it's behind South Chattahoochee Boulevard, for those of you who've ever been in the city of Atlanta. So that also in North Georgia, there are folks that have done this kind of design, and they've done it on mobile home parks, what they used to be. They do a park product on those. It's a little bit bigger square footage. And at one point in time, you used to be able to basically do what's known as retire the title on a mobile home product. And in retiring the title, it came off of the wheels and was attached to the realty. And I see somebody shaking their head. This is a very long time ago. So that may, in fact, in the future, be something that is an option. That requires a lot of work on people's parts, and it's going to have to require all of us to begin to think differently about what is a mobile home park. Okay? Does that help everybody?
Next question. Sorry, I'm going to go this side.
So kind of piggybacking off of
It's an education process too, and gently introducing them to tiny houses because they're used to their RVs,
Yeah.
their mobile home,
Which is essentially a tiny house.
which is essentially, yes, a tiny house but bigger. But do you have any response to her question?
Most of the issue that goes along with an RV park is that you have a maximum amount of time you can stay there. They're going to let you stay there for X number of days, and then you got to move. Most people that are in a tiny home would like to get somewhere and stay for at least more than 6 months, right? So that's the challenge, more times than not. Is that the folks that are in the tiny home who like to be able to stay longer than what's allowed either by the privately owned RV park or the allowed area, if that makes any sense.
It is one of those moments of can't we all just get along? But all right, next question, and these will be our final two, and we're going to end early. All right?
Hi, Helen Merrill. I'm interested in building a house on wheels, but you talked about the cottage courts. And so space is a real commodity in metropolitan Atlanta. And you're in competition with a lot of the people, big builders, who want to pay premium price for land here. And so a lot of the struggle is, aside from codes, finding some place where you can actually build a home, regardless of size, that is still affordable. And Decatur being 4.4 square miles, it makes it even more difficult. Has that been a discussion on the state level as well about how to make this more convenient in the sense of land availability?
Excellent question.
Simply state, it's not on the state level because zoning is a local matter. The state doesn't get involved in zoning.
There is always a question regarding tiny houses and affordability, especially on a foundation, because real property inside the metro area, it goes up incrementally in cost by the minute, because everybody wants to live in the city and have access to the amenities that go along with being in the city, right? That's why we're all here. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is to take a look at the reuse of real property. And when I say the reuse of real property, I'm talking about non-conforming lots. Okay? There are non-conforming lots in the city of Decatur, non-conforming lots in DeKalb County, non-conforming lots in the city of Atlanta.
What are non-conforming lots?
A non-conforming lot is that lot which is smaller than the residential requirement for a built product in the city or county under the existing code. So for the city of Atlanta, let's say I've got a lot that's 25 feet wide by 50 feet long. Typically, you can't build a residential product on that. You're going to have to go in and ask for some changes. When you get the opportunity to build a non-conforming lot, 25 by 50 for a tiny house is like, woohoo, right? Yeah. So when you're conceptualizing and thinking about this, non-conforming lots are your way in right now. Your big builders are not going to be able to do what's known as assemblages on that. It's going to require a little different effort on their part to do an assemblage. So that when we're talking about you as the buyer, homeowner, builder, wanting to be able to thread into a neighborhood, remember we're threading neighborhoods back together, you're going to do that by making use and reuse of those real property opportunities.
My question is a little bit different. We are looking to build in rural, on farmland, in a rural area. What are the state restrictions if we have a piece of farmland that someone is willing to sell us, you know, a quarter of an acre or half an acre out of that farm? What are our building codes? Is it just whatever the county is, or are there special codes for that size house on that?
So I'll start by saying, go to your county's website and call your zoning and planning, that zoning and planning department, because each county, except I think 2, have minimum square footage for tiny houses on foundation. So for example, I had a vet group call me and ask about building a tiny house village in Rockdale County. The minimum square footage in Rockdale County is 1,600 square feet. Cobb County is an interesting county. I don't know. Again, that's something that you just call Cobb County. I invited them here this weekend. Is anyone from Cobb County here? Is anyone from Cobb County planning zoning? I didn't mean, that was a complete I love your county, I just don't like driving through it. I know, you gotta pay for the stadium, so yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. So my first recommendation is you are going to have to own your own research. This isn't calling the state. The state is not going to answer that question at all. It's local. Just like Ted said, and Elizabeth said, and Angela said, each of these people has spoke to specific entities of what they control. And that county will control the minimum square footage, but then you go into another city or another dwelling, and they might have their own laws and zoning and codes as well. So it's more research on your part of knowing who to talk to and what the square footage is and what you're allowed to do with the land. Does anyone else want to add?
Just to add, there is a residential code that's applicable statewide. There is a plumbing code, there is an electrical code, there is a mechanical code for the heating and air that is mandatory statewide, and that's on that green sheet. And cities and counties can do a local amendment, but 95% of what the construction of a building is going to be the same across the state. The zoning is going to be a different matter, and what you talked about, the size.
Final question.
I live in the city of Snellville and county of Gwinnett. And I'm just, all this sounds so wonderful, but I haven't gotten far enough in this to know what in the world they're doing. And, but I did have to call zoning and planning the other day to ask a couple of questions about a building that's already on our property. And the words that came up that I hadn't heard mentioned here was variance, asking for a variance. So I'm wondering if while you're waiting for all this stuff to get voted on and all that, if anyone has any idea how open people are to doing a variance before these things become law, or exactly what that means in the first place.
Okay, back to planning and zoning. A variance, that which asks for a different use other than what is designated. Okay? The whole point of the rewrite of the code, the whole point of looking at the potential code and what they call it text modifications, is to prevent you from having to go get a variance. When you ask for a variance, you're asking to be special. And there is usually a cost for that. Added cost, you're gonna get a lawyer involved. I'd like to say that we're not expensive, sometimes we are. So that what you're trying to do when you do text rewrites, code modifications, rewrites of zoning codes, is to keep the variance applications to a minimum. Because what we'd like to be able to do is to make it easier for you, believe it or not, public servant. We want to make it easier for you to be able to do what you want to do with your real property. Did that answer your question? Did that answer your question? So that one of the things that I think was spoken to by all three of us a little earlier is you have to become involved at the local level. You have to put your feet on the ground, knock on the door, make the phone calls to let your elected officials and your public servants know this is something you want them to consider. In Gwinnett County, I don't know if anybody's brought that up to them. I know that for the city of Atlanta, DeKalb County, city of Decatur, basically in the metropolitan area, this is a hot issue. People want to talk about this. So if you're not talking about it and you're not hearing about it in your neighborhood, you need to start that conversation.
All right, folks, that will be the